The New York Knicks are finally back to being a legit team, and everyone is excited about what this means not only for the city of New York, but also for the rest of the NBA. Everyone knows when teams like the Lakers, Celtics, Knicks, and Bulls, and now I would throw in a team like the Warriors, but when these teams are good, the league just has a little bit of extra excitement in it and a little bit of edginess to it. Matter of fact, it's the Knicks themselves that typically bring a lot of that edginess to the league, as in the past, there were a few core tenets that made the Knicks, well, the Knicks. When it came to New York basketball, you knew you could expect three things: defense, the best point guards.
Here's Jackson challenging Jones, and we're tied. What a performance on the New York City product.
New York City's produced so many great point guards.
Pearl Washington, Rod Strickland, Kenny Smith. That's the history of New York, point guards. That's the base, those guys right there.
The Dick McGuires and the Bob Cousy's.
Watch Bob Cousy exhibit that tremendous skill which has made people call him Mr. Basketball.
They claimed that when you played with Bob Cousy, if you didn't have your eyes open, you'd lose teeth. Because he'd find people when they didn't even know they were open.
New York basketball players in general were very good going to the basket.
Alston banks it in again. Great drive by Marbury. Oh, what a great use of the bounce.
Very good ball handlers.
Between the legs, behind the back, crossover, just, variety, you know what I'm saying?
Here's Anderson to the hoop.
Kenny Anderson, he's an artist with the basketball.
When you think of a New York City basketball player, I think of Tiny Archibald.
Archibald on a drive at the other end, beautifully done.
Somebody slick, somebody really smooth.
That's the New York City right there.
Brooklyn had a toughness about them, a grittiness.
The wheel by Tinsley and a beauty.
Manhattan had a suave about them.
Charlie Scott, a young, exciting, do-it-all player.
Queens were the guys who we always thought we were the thinking man's player. We understand the science of the game.
It was Kenny Smith who set it up. Walker gets around one defender, tries on another and gets the score.
There it is, New York City.
We've had a lot of great point guards to come out of New York, and for me to be a part of those names is very special, and I definitely take a lot of pride in that.
And grittiness that embodied the energy of the city. And for a while, that identity was gone. The Knicks lost their way. They tried to chase stars who didn't fit. They cycled through coaches, front office, and so-called saviors. They lost the fear factor that used to come with playing in Madison Square Garden. But now, something feels different. This team, this version of the Knicks, looks and feels like the Knicks of old. They've got that edge again, that toughness, that New York energy that doesn't fold under pressure, doesn't make excuses, and doesn't back down from a fight. And the reason for that, Jalen Brunson. He's not the biggest guy. He's not the flashiest. He's not a superstar in the way people think of them today. But make no mistake about it, Jalen Brunson is exactly the kind of leader this franchise has been missing for decades. A point guard with patience, poise, and pure cold-bloodedness. When the game is on the line, a player who embodies everything that made the Knicks great in the first place. And if you know the history of New York basketball, you knew exactly what that means. Because the Knicks' identity, it didn't start in Madison Square Garden. It started in the streets. It started in Rucker Park. And before we talk about Brunson bringing it back, we got to talk about where it all began. To understand New York basketball, you have to start on the playgrounds, Rucker Park. That's where legends were made, not in the NBA, not in the NCAA, but right there in the heart of Harlem, where the toughest players earned their reputation. It wasn't just about skill, it was about heart. It was about swagger. It was about proving yourself. Because in New York, the game isn't just a game, it's a test. If you could survive there, if you could dominate in front of that crowd under that pressure, then you weren't just good, you were real.
New York, America's capital of culture, art, and finance. But nothing captures the spirit of the city like playground basketball.
The mecca of basketball is New York City, period. New York is basketball.
These guys are living their dreams on the playgrounds. That's what New York City basketball is all about. It's poetry. It's poetry. It is something that should be bottled and shipped all around this country. You go to a Rucker game, and for the people around the country that haven't been, I haven't seen it, I don't know anything about it, there's no place like it.
Holcomb Rucker, a man who worked for the Parks Department, started a basketball tournament in 1950. By the time the 60s hit, the tournament had gotten so big that the game's baddest hoopers were coming uptown just about every day. Wilt, Kareem, Dr. J, and the local legends were getting their chance to show out against the pros.
I remember the first time I played out there, I couldn't believe how many people came out to see the game. It wasn't the out of bounds line, it was people's feet. So if you made a shot or, stumbled in the sideline or something, you fell on top of people. It might be harder to play out there than it is to play in the Garden.
And that mentality, that fight, it didn't stay in the parks. It made its way to the Mecca, Madison Square Garden. The Knicks at their best were a reflection of New York City basketball. The 1970 Knicks, Walt Frazier running the show with smooth control, Willis Reed setting the tone with toughness, a team that didn't rely on one superstar, but instead outworked you, outthought you, and outdefended you.
The seeds for the 1970 team had been planted throughout the decade of the 60s. Because the Knicks had such a checkered history up until that point, not a lot of people except hardcore basketball people knew what was going on. One by one, Eddie Donovan, the general manager, Red Holtzman, the coach, added the pieces.
Red Holtzman was a guy who was hard but fair. There was only one set of rules for Frazier, for Reed, for the last guy on the bench.
Red Holtzman's mantra was hit the open man, which means don't force a shot and look to see who's cutting, who's open.
His emphasis was about team play. Basketball is a simple game. Hit the open man, see the basketball on defense.
He knew how to coach men, and that was with several very simple rules.
Defense is number one, and passing to the open man was number two.
That was his main story. Working on our defense, making sure we was able to stop the ball, see the ball, block out, rebound.
Well, he always had the utmost respect of his players. He never saw color. If you work hard in practice, you get in the game. That's why, unequivocally, he's the most successful Knicks coach ever.
The 1990s Knicks, Patrick Ewing, the anchor, Charles Oakley, the enforcer, John Starks, the street baller turned all-star. That team wasn't all about flash. It was about breaking your will over the course of 48 minutes. And at the core of it all, New York grit. The Knicks were never a team built around a single transcendent offensive talent. They were about collective toughness, defense, physicality, controlling the pace. You didn't outshoot the Knicks. You didn't outskill them. You had to survive them. That's what made the city fall in love with those teams. And that's why for so long, New Yorkers checked out, because the Knicks stopped being about that. They abandoned the blueprint. They chased stars that didn't fit. They tried to be something they weren't, instead of embracing what made them great in the first place. But now, that blueprint is starting to come back. And in 2025, we're seeing the rebirth of that identity right in front of our eyes. Because if you look at the current Knicks, if you really study how they play, how they win, you'll notice something. They look a whole lot like the Knicks of old. And at the center of it, the guy leading the charge, Jalen Brunson. When the Knicks signed Jalen Brunson in 2022, it wasn't the kind of move that made headlines like a superstar signing. But for those who knew basketball, who really understood what wins, and it was the most important move the franchise had made in years. Brunson wasn't here to be the flashiest scorer or the most athletic guard in the league. He was here to stabilize the team, to bring structure, leadership, and a winning mentality that could spread to the rest of the roster. And from the moment he stepped on the floor, the Knicks started building around him the right way. At first, New York leaned into defense. The front office surrounded Brunson with the size, physicality, and toughness, guys who fit the DNA of the past Knicks teams. Julius Randle as a physical bruising power forward, Mitchell Robinson as an elite shot-blocking, glass-cleaning center, Quentin Grimes and Josh Hart as relentless perimeter defenders, RJ Barrett as a slashing wing with two-way upside. This was a team built to grind out wins. Their defense wore teams down, their rebounding created extra possessions, and their physicality made every game a war. And at the heart of it all, Brunson's leadership. When the game slowed down in the fourth quarter, when it became about decision making and execution, Brunson was the answer. His footwork, patience, and ability to control the pace made him the perfect leader for this kind of team. That version of the Knicks was scrappy, relentless, and fundamentally sound. But they had one problem. They couldn't score at a high enough level. In the playoffs, when teams locked in defensively, they became too reliant on Brunson to create offense. Randle was inconsistent, Robinson wasn't a scoring threat, and while their defense kept them in games, they needed a true offensive counterpunch. So they made a move. Enter Karl Anthony Towns. When the Knicks traded for Cat, it was a clear shift in philosophy. They were no longer just about physicality and defense, they were about adding elite offensive firepower. Towns immediately changed the way they played. He stretched the floor, giving Brunson more space to operate. He provided a legitimate second scoring option, taking pressure off of Brunson. He forced defenses to respect the Knicks from deep, which opened up everything. Now, instead of relying on grit and toughness alone, the Knicks had balance. Brunson controlled the tempo. Towns gave them versatility. The Villanova core. Obviously, they had DiVincenzo, but they traded him, and they kept Hart and Bridges, and that brought chemistry and two-way impact. And just like that, they had options. They could grind you down defensively. They could punish you in mismatches in the post. They could outshoot you from the three. This wasn't just an identity shift. It was a new level of adaptability. Knicks reclaimed their past DNA built on toughness and defense, but modernized it with offensive versatility. And now, they aren't just a fun, scrappy team anymore. They're on the doorstep of something bigger. Which brings us to the next question. What will it take to go from just a fun team to a true title contender? Because if they're serious about bringing the championship to New York, there's still one missing piece. Right now, the Knicks are good. They've broken past mediocrity, they found a real identity, and they've got momentum. But good isn't enough. The NBA doesn't care about good teams, it rewards champions. And to make that leap to go from a dangerous playoff team to a legitimate title contender, the Knicks need to make a fundamental shift in how they play. The front office knew it, Leon Rose knew it. They had a defensive-first team, a gritty group that fought hard every night. But when the playoffs came, they didn't have enough offensive firepower. So they made a move, trading away Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo to bring in Karl Anthony Towns. Just like that, everything changed. No more bruising, defensive-minded front court. Cat brought elite scoring at the center position. No more relying on Jalen Brunson to carry the entire offense. Cat could be a true second star. No more one-dimensional identity. Now they had balance between defense and firepower. At first glance, this seemed like the missing piece, the exact thing that could elevate the Knicks to true contender status. But here's the thing about identity shifts. They come with growing pains. See, in trying to evolve offensively, the Knicks lost a bit of what made them great in the first place. Adding Towns gave them more scoring versatility, but it also created new challenges. Defensive drop-off. Cat isn't the rim protector that Mitchell Robinson was, and he's not the same physical presence as Randle. Spacing adjustments. Brunson now had to adapt to playing with a high-usage big, something he hadn't done before. Team toughness. The Knicks' identity was built on relentless defense and effort. Did this trade weaken that edge? I don't know. If the Knicks were truly going to level up, they had to find a way to merge both styles, high-level offense, without sacrificing their defensive backbone. That's where the real challenge begins. Because every championship team in recent history found that balance. Denver 2023, Jokic-led offense, but an elite defensive system built around Aaron Gordon, KCP, Bruce Brown. Milwaukee 2021, Giannis and Middleton scoring, anchored by Drew Holiday and Brook Lopez's defense. Golden State dynasty, as great as Curry was, Draymond Green made them a defensive juggernaut. The Knicks have the talent, but talent alone doesn't win. They need commitment, a full buy-in to making this hybrid system work. And that means Cat going to have to start embracing defense. If Towns isn't going to be a dominant defender, he at least needs to buy in and be serviceable on that end. Brunson setting the tone on both sides. His leadership just can't be offensive. He needs to demand effort and accountability defensively. And then developing a true defensive scheme around Cat. Whether that means more switching, more help defense, or tweaking the rotations, the Knicks have to get creative. Because if they don't, they'll be good, but not great. And in New York, good isn't good enough. For decades, the Knicks have been a big market team that didn't deliver big market success. They've had the fans, the arena, the history, but the Knicks of the past made one critical mistake. They've always thought one player, one quick fix could be the answer. They thought Carmelo Anthony could carry them. They thought Kristaps Porzingis was the future. They thought big names alone would bring a championship back to New York. But this time, it feels different. This isn't just about a single superstar. This is about a foundation, a real team with real chemistry built on an actual identity. The Knicks aren't just stacking talent, they're building something sustainable. And that's what separates true title contenders from teams that just flash for a couple of years. At the heart of all of this is Jalen Brunson, the guy nobody thought was a franchise player, the guy the Mavericks let walk, the guy who wasn't supposed to be the one who turned New York around. But here's the thing about real leaders. They don't need the hype, they don't need to be the loudest, they don't need to be the headlines. They just win. And that's what Brunson is doing. He's bringing back the culture, he's bringing back the expectations. And if he can lead this team to a title, he's not just going to be remembered as the guy who made the Knicks fun again. He's going to be remembered as one of the most important players in franchise history. Because in 10 years, when we look back at how the Knicks finally became champions again, we're going to talk about Jalen Brunson as the guy who started it all.